Welcome to the Bald Eagle 242 YouTube channel. What I've got here today is a little bit different than what I normally work on. It's these little battery powered electric mowers. These are becoming very popular. If you don't already have one, I guarantee if you look around your neighborhood, you've probably got a neighbor using one of them. What I'm gonna do here is get into the troubleshooting on these things. This is a Craftsman 40 volt. It's the same mower as a Black&Decker 2040. I picked this one up with 3 batteries from a seller that told me it has problems. Before you start working on these things, first thing you want to do is make sure you don't have a battery in it. I'm also going to pull the blade off of it because I'm going to sharpen the blade once I get it going. All right, this blade comes off with just a 13 or a ½ inch. Either one of them will work. The other thing I do is always stick that bolt back in there, snug that down so it doesn't go spinning across my garage floor. All right, I'm also going to pull this safety out of here. This is going to be key in fixing this mower and diagnosing it later in the video. I'll show you. Now that we got everything set up there, I'll go over the tools that are going to help you in the repair on this mower. First thing you're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver to remove the case bolts off of this thing. A flat screwdriver comes in handy for some of the connections, just pulling them apart. There are some wire ties on some of the wires, so just a little pair of snips or cutters to cut the wire ties off. One thing key, if you're going to work on any kind of battery powered mowers at all, you're going to need a multimeter. I do have a fluke meter here that I use for most of this kind of stuff. Obviously, you're going to need a good battery. Even though this is a 40 volt mower, a 12 volt battery is plenty enough to run the motor at slow speeds just to bypass everything and make sure that the motor itself is actually good. What I'm going to do is go through the safety switches, how they operate, how to test the switches, show you how to test the motor itself. I'll even show you how to change the speed controller on it if you have to, if yours is bad. I don't think one is bad on this. For the video purposes, I'm going to remove this little connector. Go ahead and get the screws out of the case on this thing. Once you've got all your screws out, pull your handle off here. You can't get this through the case with this handle on there, so you got to take that off. Lift up your chute hatch in the back here. Pick up the back, and then we got to kind of pull this over around this handle. Pick up on that. Tilt it over to the side like that. It'll come right off. This is all you guys really need to do to work on this, but I'm going to disconnect this because I want to take this battery connector out of the housing here so I can get this housing out of the way. So I'll just pull that out of here. That way we can get this thing out of the way. And what I'll do is just hook this back up. Make sure you put the red cable on the correct side. If you're not sure, grab your battery and just put it up here where you can see it, and it'll have a plus sign and a negative sign. Look at it before you hook it up. But the red side goes on this side if you're looking at this mower from the front. That way we can just plug a battery in. We can leave it lay right here. We can do our testing. Right. Once you've got that cover off, this can remain on your cover. You don't need to take it off. Make sure that there's no debris down in there. None of these terminals are damaged or bent, because that has to make good contact for your battery to be in here secure and snug against those connectors. Also, check your connectors. Make sure none of them have come unplugged, none of them are damaged. A few connectors in here. Your speed controller's back here on the back. I am going to show you how to take that completely out of here and change it. But check this wire. If you've got an Ego or some other brands, they actually have safety switches in the handle. This one does not. But when you collapse the handle to fold them up for storage, it has a safety switch that disables it. This wire can become pinched. Just look it over really well to make sure that there's no damage to it. Another thing to look for here, this is a DC brush motor. Check these brushes. There's a little safety tab right here. If that tab gets bent, this brush can actually back out of here and it won't make contact with the motor on the inside. Also notice here, this looks a little bit burnt. But check those brushes. You have a positive DC brush on that side. You have your negative on this side. Either one of these, if that tab becomes damaged, this whole thing will pull out of here and it won't make good contact in here. Check your armature here to make sure that that is good and shiny. I've got the blade off of it, so you can actually reach underneath it and run a piece of sandpaper around it while you spin it. Also look for mice damage. You know, if you've got one of these that's been sitting somewhere for a while, you could have mice that have gotten in here and chewed on some of these wires. At this point, I'm ready to start putting some power on this, and we're going to start by testing the motor first. I can't stress enough, you're going to be putting power onto a motor with no safeties engaged at all. It's very easy to get hurt. I strongly recommend you pull the blade off of this thing, because any tool, any foot, any finger, anything under it is going to get swept up in that blade and going to get cut. So I don't know your skill set, but I am going to say you're messing with something here that can really hurt you if you don't understand what you're doing. No more than I'd watch a video on how to do heart surgery and go out and try to do heart surgery. If you don't understand this stuff, don't mess with it. So with that said, I'm I'm going to test this motor, show you how to do it. If you don't feel comfortable with this, I would recommend you take the mower somewhere or have somebody come look at it. What I'll do first is take these terminals off of here so I don't backfeed the controller, and then this will effectively just check this motor to make sure the motor is working. I've got a 12-volt battery here, positive and negative. Got my positive and negative terminals here. I'm just going to clamp that one on there. All this is going to tell us is that this motor will spin. Now it's going to spin slow because this is only 12 volts on a 40-volt mower. Put that on there. That energizes that motor. We know this motor is now good. We can back up, we can start looking at safety switches, and we can start looking at the speed controller and other issues that would cause this thing not to run. But again, at this point, we know we've got a good motor, so we'll move on to the next step. All right, once you get your lead wires back on there, we're going to come up here to the handle, and we're going to check this to make sure this switch up here is working correctly. This cable is actually what pulls the switch. This is nothing more than a lock. It's a mechanical lock to hold this cable in place when you pull this handle down, so that when you're running it, if you let go of the handle, it releases the switch in here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about when we get that apart. All right, on this handle switch, now you've got 6 screws to take apart here on the back side of it. Once you take that apart, now it is spring-loaded. There's a spring underneath this button. Now it's a lever spring, and then we'll get to where this cable pulls the switch, and I'll show you how to check that switch once we get in there. All right, once you get that apart, there's a little spring-loaded lever in there. That's what that button pushes down. And here I'll show you how this works. Let me zoom in a little bit here. When you push that red button down, you're effectively pushing this little lever down. And what that does is the cable then pulls this piece and holds that. Now, as long as you hold this handle down, it holds this red button down. Now, when you let go of the handle, which is this red lever, it releases this, and then that pops up. And you'll see right here, it pushes the button in on this switch. And that button right there is what triggers this lawnmower to run as long as everything else is good. So anyway, I'll show you how to test this switch now to make sure the switch is actually working the way it's supposed to. To check this switch, we've got our meter here. You're basically going to use 2 settings on this meter to check anything on a DC mower. One is continuity. All this is going to tell you is that a circuit has been completed. So if these pros make contact, it'll tell you that you've got a completed circuit. The only other thing we would use on this meter is the DC setting. It's a direct line or a straight line, so that's direct current. The wavy line is AC or alternating current. So remember those 2 settings, the DC setting and the continuity setting. Now on this switch, think of this as your red button. This button is not pushed down. This top connections here are making contact. Your bottom connections, however, are not. So when you push the red button down and then you engage this lever, try to get out of the way here where you can see it, pulls that entire switch. You'll see it starting to push the button in on the switch down here. You'll hear that click. Now I've got a clamp here I'm going to put on this handle to hold that in place. Now this bottom part of this switch should be activated. That is what engages your blade. Now, assuming your key is on here, this key is not present right now, but we can still check the switch for continuity. So I've got continuity there. When I release this, try to do this without it all flying apart, this will come back down. It's going to release that button. See the button start to go back down. This will then pop back up. So unless you push this back down, this handle doesn't move that switch unless this is pushed down. When this is working properly, the top 2 terminals should have continuity at all times, even though the switch is not engaged. That completes your circuit. This one down here does not. So that's how you check that switch, and that'll confirm that this switch is good. And believe it or not, this is not a cheap switch. This little switch is about 40 bucks. I'll put a link to it down below just in case you have a bad one. Replacing this switch is just a matter of pulling this out. It's very simple. You've got 4 wires on it. Switch comes out just like that. Put it back in the same way. Your wires will pretty much stay where they belong. Put the cover back on. You got to push this lever down. Make sure your switch is tight down in there. Push that lever down. Kind of hinge this on there so you can hold that as it pushes together. Just kind of wiggle it until it pops together. Then you can put your screws back in the underside. All right, once you get all your screws in there, press your button down first. Button's number 1, the lever's number 2, so press your button once. You should hear it click, and it should stay engaged. disengages when you lift the lever. Through process of elimination, I've pretty much eliminated the fact that this controller is bad, but I do want to show you guys how to swap this out, or at least the best way to swap it out so you don't get any wires mixed up. And that is, take your new controller and just change this one wire at a time. Now, I know this one has the burnt wire on it, so probably not a bad idea to change it out anyway. I'll go ahead and swap this out, pull the red wire off, pull the black wire off, and basically just swap this out one wire at a time so there's no chance that you get anything mixed up. What I'll do is go ahead and pull the screw out of this thing so it's a little easier to maneuver around in here. Go ahead and take our battery connector loose here. We'll go ahead and plug that into the new one. I'm just doing this one wire at a time. As you take it loose from one, plug it into the other one. And there's pretty much no chance that you're going to get that mixed up. All you need to do is make sure you watch the wire colors. Now this is red to white. So we're going to take a red wire loose from the controller, from a white wire from the mower, and plug the same thing in from this one. Then we're going to take loose green wire from the mower and a black wire from the new controller. And you pretty much just eliminate it until you run out of wires. So here at this point we've got red to black. And that's pretty much it. So once that's completely disconnected, then we've got everything connected on this one. You really don't have anything to mix up here. Basically, that's all there is to replacing this speed controller. And then once you get it mounted back on there, get all the wires hooked up, just mount it back on here. And other than the switch, we will have to disconnect this to connect it back into that case. Right, one thing I have made an assumption throughout this video is you do have a good battery. Most of these batteries, you can simply press a button on them and it'll tell you you've got the green lights and how charged up it is. If they flash red, it's generally a sign that something's wrong with them. But you can also check these with the meter. Put your meter on the DC setting, and you can check these batteries. Red on positive, just put your terminal down in here, and it'll tell you at least if this battery has 40 volts. Now, it should be over 40. This isn't necessarily an indication that this is a good battery, but it'll tell you at least that there's not a broken connection in it or something like that. If the voltage comes up much below 40, you could have a dead cell in it, or if it comes up at 0, you could have something that's bad in the battery. Like I said, I made the assumptions that you have a good charger and a good battery, so just keep that in mind. You want to check that too to make sure it's not a battery issue. If you have two batteries, try both of them. If both batteries won't charge, you may have a bad charger. So you want to make sure that you've got voltage on your battery before you start diving into the troubleshooting on the mower itself. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hook this battery up here. And again, like I said earlier in the video, when you're hooking this up, make sure your battery connections, your positive and your negative, if you took these wires loose, make sure it matches these up. Now I've got positive on this side. This battery's upside down, so when I flip this over, it's going to be right. So you've got negative on this side, positive on this side. You got a red wire here and a black wire here, positive and negative. So make sure if you took this loose to positively identify that your cables are hooked up correctly. If they are not, you could cause some damage to this mower. All right, so right there, now that, you can just lay that there. And this is the main reason I took this cover off top here and pulled this connector out of here, just so I could do this with the cover out of the way and do some testing on this. Now that we've went through how to change the speed controller, how to diagnose a switch problem up here on the dash. I do have the motor hooked back up. I have a battery on it. Blade's still off of it, so we're still safe here. All right, hopefully this has been helpful, guys. I'm gonna show you now exactly what's wrong with this and why I got this mower at such a good price. The speed controller was not bad. The switch up here was not bad. At least the internal switch here was not bad. The batteries are good. The chargers are good. All three batteries are testing good. What I found wrong with this thing shortly after I got it, I'd already bought parts, so I wanted to continue the video just to kind of give you guys some troubleshooting techniques and things to look for on this. The only thing wrong with this mower, if you push this button in, gauge that, theoretically this thing should be running right now. I've got a battery on it, I've got the speed controller hooked up, I know the switch, everything up here is working. I've even got the key switch in here. Remember earlier in the video I said this was going to be key. Let me show you something here. That's pushed all the way in. It will not go in any farther. If I pull that out, wiggle that in just the right spot, this will work. Now if I push that all the way in, this mower dies. there is a bad connection in the key itself. I've got another one on order. I don't have one here. I probably will, and these are molded together. I may take this apart, but the key itself is bad. You know, key point from this is don't overlook the obvious. I spent, I think, 40 bucks on the speed controller. Luckily, I did not buy a switch, but I bought this based on what a seller told me he thought was wrong with it. That's a good thing to keep in mind, is just because you have a customer or you buy something and somebody tells you something's wrong with it, take it with a grain of salt. I bought it, the speed controller, so I could get the video done this weekend and do it very quickly. In hindsight, I probably should have diagnosed it myself. I figured this out shortly after I bought the mower. I hope this video was helpful. I hope this helped you to understand how these things work. They're not taboo. They're actually pretty easy to work on. But anyway, bad key. The connections in here are actually good. It's actually the connections in this key. You could just make a little jumper wire, you know, to get this going too, but I do not recommend bypassing this. It's there for a reason. You know, you may sell this to grandma down the road and she's got her grandkids over. This is designed so you can pull this out and leave this thing sitting in your garage so the kids don't come in, you know, pushing buttons and it won't start up. So anyway, that's the problem with this mower. Closing, I just want to say thanks for watching. I've picked up a lot of subscribers here since I posted my last video, and I appreciate you guys that have subscribed to my channel. I've got 2 more videos I know I'm working on here in the next few weeks. One is I'm going to do a real quick video on my lift and just give you guys some insight into what it is, how I acquired it, how I utilize it. On top of that, I picked up a John Deere GT262. It's an older mower. It's in running shape, decent shape, needs some restoration done on it. I'm going to be doing a video on that. So anyway, guys, stay tuned. Again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.